Well, initially I had no idea what I was doing or how to play the guitar. And I don't know why, but I thought that you were only allowed to do upstrokes. So for 2 years I was just, only up. And finally I started taking lessons from a teacher who showed me that I could also do downstrokes, or both, down and up simultaneously, or not simultaneously, but alternating. But I didn't really, initially I had no concept of how to pick fast. I just wanted to play, your basic kind of rhythm guitar. And I think the first thing that approached the picking technique that I learned had to do with muting on the bridge. I really liked the sound of Van Halen. That was out early on, so I was learning things. So for something like that, I wasn't even thinking about upstrokes or downstrokes. I was just thinking about tone and how to get a big, huge staccato. I didn't really even want to play fast yet. I just wanted it to go chug, 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 and that I got through muting. For picking faster things, I had no confidence at all that I could do it for the longest time. I would see people, my heroes picking fast, and I thought, well, that's why they're the heroes, and I'll never be able to do it because whenever I would try, it would sound horrible. So really, I concentrated on left-hand things where I wasn't picking very much, maybe 1 note per string. But my left hand became very strong and adept because of that. So when I finally started to learn some picking patterns, the left hand was already set. And the first lick that really got me over the bridge was this one, with 3 notes on a string and 1 note on the next string. In this case, it's B, C, D, and an E with an upstroke. So it's down, up, then down, up to get back to it. So all alternate picking. If you've seen my instructional videos, this is all over the place. So that was really the thing that got me into fast picking. But that was, 8 years after I started playing. It didn't happen quickly, and I don't think it should have happened quickly. I think the left hand really has to come first. The left hand steers, the right hand is the gas, and if you can't steer, you shouldn't press the gas. Well, if you alternate pick a 3-note per string scale, you have no choice but to do both outside and inside. They both occur. You just can't help it. When you start out changing a string, the first time you change, it's outside. You go between a down and up. But the second time, it's going to be inside. So both of them occur. I think for me what's important is I really like alternate picking in that each motion is separate. I don't like to do 2 downs in a row in one motion. It's a very efficient technique, and some people do it very well. But it doesn't have the same rhythmic and dynamic control that you can get from alternate picking. So for scales, I really prefer alternate with all separate motions. And it's plenty fast for my purposes. With other licks that have more hammer-ons and pull-offs, where I really have a choice, I've got time, because of the hammer-ons and pull-offs, I've got some time to decide what kind of picking I'm going to do. For those, absolutely, I try to do outside picking. I can use more force because of it. It's the same principle with the snare drum. The further away you get, the harder you can hit it. And to me, having the ability to hit it hard gives you more tone options. It also really makes it a lot cleaner, especially if you're doing string skipping licks. Something like this. Where I'm only using notes on the high E string, the G string, and the low A string. There's strings in the middle that I'm not playing, and I don't want to hit them by accident. So if I'm going outside of those strings, there's way less chance that I'm going to accidentally hit this one, the B string that I don't want to play. If I'm doing inside, then it's almost impossible not to hit it. So for those licks, I can't see how you do them unless you do them outside picking. And I want to be able to do those licks because I like them.
You just do that a little slower?
Yeah. So this is 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So B, on the 7th fret, 3 notes on the G string. There are G, E, and D. Just picking the first one, doing 2 pull-offs after that. And then a G note on the 10th fret of the A string with a downstroke. So it's up, down, 2 pull-offs, and a downstroke. Up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down. Then I'm going back up, doing an upstroke, 2 hammer-ons, and back to the up that you started with. So it becomes up, down, down, up, up. So it's actually, after you cycle the lick, it's 2 ups and 2 downs. And I don't recommend that you start with this lick. You know, if you want to do that pattern, I would do a simpler one with that same format. For instance, this one, that would be A, straight scale down, G, F, E, and a D on the G string. Same exact technique, up, down, down, and an upstroke on the way back up, up. That way you can really work on the picking part and concentrate on it. You don't have to worry about this giant stretch. Once you master this one, it's going to be very easy, believe it or not, to do this. Or the diminished version. So we have the E minor 7th version. Here's a diminished version, starting in the same B note. And this is a nice one fingering-wise. It's all 3 frets apart. And then I'm going to do this crazy major 7th one, if I can remember it, which is, it'd be G major 7th. It actually works as a harmony to the E minor 7th. Or, that's a left-hand challenge, but a good one. When I first started taking guitar lessons, my teacher just gave me the idea to have 1 finger per fret. And I sort of took it as a rule. So the whole step ended up always occurring with my 3rd finger. And I never thought of another way to do it. I never saw anybody else do it any other way, so that's all I knew. And I think just from using it, even though the 3rd finger and pinky tend to be weaker fingers, through practice and use, they got, you know, strong enough to do what I wanted. Sometimes even for whole steps, I'll use my 3rd finger and 4th. I think there are advantages to both ways. I've seen players, you know, like Yngwie Malmsteen uses his 2nd more often, and he does amazing things with it. But I think there's also some things I can do, especially with different scale shapes, like to play a Mixolydian scale. I do this one lick a lot, where I just go up and down the scale notes. And that really lends itself to using these 2 fingers. Again, I'll play those notes slowly, starting with the low A, or the middle A, I should say. It would be... sounds good over an A7 chord. So that's a good exercise for these 2. Yeah, this is a good exercise for developing these last 2. This would be something in the key of E minor, and it would be a stretching a 4th. So you're going from E to A. The lick itself is going to be starting on the B string, and I'm going to do B, D, and E. And then I'm gonna reach up and get the G note with my 3rd finger. It's also a good exercise for the 3rd finger, having to do that little rocking motion. Now I'm going to alternate. The next time I'm going to go to the A note instead of the G with my pinky. So I'm getting directly from the E to the A with that 1 pinky. And I'm going to alternate between the 2, which will sound like this. Again, I'm not picking everything. I'm doing like 2 quick pick notes. And that's a good sounding lick, and it's good for the coordination of the two hands. And also good for these fingers, definitely. The string skipping stuff, I had gone to school and I had learned about arpeggios that existed in music, all kinds of music, and one of them was a minor seventh arpeggio. And I think initially I learned sweep picking shapes for it, or I would learn sort of more traditional. I don't know what you call it, like jazz shapes or something. And so I was familiar with the note choice, but I don't know, I don't remember exactly how I did it, but I thought, maybe I could get it, the notes that way, was skipping over a string to get one of those big intervals. And it really worked well with my existing legato techniques. I already had techniques that I could do with scales, where I would do 3 notes on a string, 3 notes on the next string, and 1 note on the string below. And just, going up and down. So if I took that same 3, 3, 1 pattern and applied it to string skipping, and I could get some really cool arpeggios. This is, again, that A minor 7th arpeggio. So I'm getting notes out of A minor 7th, and I'm getting that same pattern, 3 notes, and 1 note. And the techniques required were exactly the same as what I was doing already, so it required 0 new practice. Now, it gave me a sound similar to sweep picking in that the intervals were big, but I found that it was much easier because I had a vocabulary of legato and hammer-on pull-off licks already for the smaller stuff that I could apply to this. I could do like a thirds pattern, or fours. Just little things like that, or many different variations. And it was really easy to make transitions between my regular licks and this, because this felt like my regular licks. It was based on the same techniques, it was just stretching out a little wider. So I like that. I mean, so much of my solo playing has come from learning something very simple and expanding on it. And this is exactly that same principle, just taking something where I'm not stretching so much and stretching out, and suddenly, boom, it's a whole new sound. Well, there's lots of ways. I mean, the first thing I thought of when you said that was actually when I went to school and learned how to harmonize a major scale. And by that, I mean I would take a chord. This is the one they showed us anyway. This is a C major 7th chord, and it's voiced 1 being the root, the 5th interval, the 7th interval, and the 3rd interval. And we would take each note in that chord and move it up 1 note in the scale. When you do that, you get this chord, which is a different kind of chord. It becomes a D minor 7th, but it still fits into the same key signature. And I'm using a lot of big terms here, and I do recommend finding a teacher to explain exactly what they are. And it's really easy when you look at it on paper. It has a nice mathematical architecture. And as well as looking nice on paper, it sounds good. When you do all the chords in the entire scale, it'll sound like this. Now, it's not the most heavy metal sounding thing in the world, but it does sound good. And all those chords are in the same key center. So in other words, you could play the shape of a C major scale. And depending on what note you finish on, that shape is going to fit over any one of these chords. And I could play the D chord, and I can play the same shape as long as I land on the right chord. Or I could do the same thing with maybe the G chord. each time I'm playing that same shape, but it works with all these chords. So when I learned that, I didn't just see it as, oh, here's some new jazz chords and I can learn jazz. I saw it as, now I can take one rock lick and I can move it up all over the neck in the same key. And it really expanded how I looked at soloing. I could take something really simple like an ascending 6. It's got 6 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and ascending it goes up. And then I could start on the next step of the scale, change the fingering to be in that scale, to stay within the key signature. Start on the next step, next step, next step, all the way up. And I just love that idea. I could take one lick and I could multiply it by 7, and that's a lot of extra stuff you get. So it suddenly made the whole fretboard available to me, where before if I was in A minor, I'd be stuck here. And suddenly I could play all over the place, and that was exciting. I forgot what the question was at the beginning.
Creativity.
Oh yeah, so that was one way of very intellectually creating new ideas for the fretboard. I would say, besides that, one of the best ways to be creative with the instrument is to drop your pick on the floor. I would say besides that, one of the best things is to get rhythmic ideas, because there's only so many notes on the guitar, and it's very easy, especially when you're practicing technique, to forget about the rhythm and to just think, I want to play a scale up and down as fast as I possibly can, and I want to come up with 1,000,000 16th note patterns, and I want to pick them very fast. And so much of the beauty and coolness of music is involved in the rhythms and the spaces in between. And to me, a great way to come up with that is to choose a rhythm or a tempo, and you can just scratch it out on the guitar and start improvising along with it. And you can do it with another guitar player and trade off, which is really fun, or you can just do it by yourself. And what you begin to find is very simple things will be very powerful. When you don't have a rhythm, simple things aren't that interesting. It's how they relate to the rhythm that makes them cool. So you got to have the rhythm as your base. And you start adding things in. So that's just, I start having fun with it, I'll be here for an hour doing that. But to me, that's really enjoyable, and all kinds of ideas come out of it. Other creative things. Lyrics are really good for coming up with, at the end, you can just use the lyric as a rhythmic and melodic tool, and you can toss it away at the end if you want to write an instrumental. So for example, you could take any lyric or phrase and turn it into music. Just off the top of my head, you could take, I read guitar techniques every month. It'd be like, let's see, I read guitar techniques, how to phrase that? I read guitar techniques every month. There's a rhythm. So let's add some notes to it now. So it's a way to just get started. At the end of the song, you might have gotten rid of the lyric, but at least it gave you a riff. There's an American TV show called Entertainment Tonight, and the theme is da, 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 da. And every time I hear it, I think, Entertainment Tonight! I bet the writer did that. So that's a great way to create new stuff. Well, the Bach stuff is a great technical challenge to figure out, because originally it wasn't played on guitar. It was usually played on piano or harpsichord or maybe cello or violin. So in order to get those notes on the guitar, to me, is a really fun and interesting challenge, and inspires new techniques that I might not have thought of otherwise. It does inspire stuff that I'll do in my rock band. I would say, mostly. I mean, not so much in the blues sense, but actually it could there too, because some of the rhythmic things. One of the things I'm trying to remember the song. Just that. Right there, there's some rhythms I wouldn't have thought of before. You could go like, it's that same rhythm, but rock notes. Let's see. Oh, and also like for that, you could do. I mean, of course, a lot of Yngwie Malmsteen style stuff is classically based, but I could take those patterns I learned in that piece, and maybe do something like what was that one? Come up with my own simpler version of it. I wish that I was as compositionally advanced as Bach was, because the things he wrote I can figure them out, but when I see them there, I don't really know how he came up with them. To me, they all sound beautiful. He's not dissonant, it's not weird, that complexity isn't too much for my ear, but it's beyond the math that I know. And I would love to learn that in math someday, math being the music theory that's behind that. Because I'm sure it would be applicable to rock or to a lot of things. Some of it is, a lot of it has to do with live performance. To be able to do something that I can do, sitting down here in a controlled environment, on stage when the monitors are terrible and the stage is uneven and there's just a million things going against you, and to still be able to do it well. And also to be able to really communicate emotionally to the audience through the instrument. And that to me, although it seems like a simple thing, took such a long time and continues to be an art. Because when you write your songs and you compose your solos and you practice, usually you're either practicing by yourself or you're communicating with the other musicians. And suddenly you're put in this different situation where you have to communicate outward. And it's completely different. The thing that I would originally do, like when I was with Mr. Big, is we would have a set prepared. We do it the same way every night. It would be really tight, really well played, but depending on how the audience was, we wouldn't change it. No matter who the audience was or how they felt or what the venue was, we would play that set the same way. And sometimes it was great, and sometimes it was a little out of sync. And I really enjoy now taking more chances and modifying what I do to fit what I feel coming out of the audience. When I do shows now, sometimes I'll come out just with my guitar, I'll look at the audience, and I'll really look at them. Sort of check people out and get a feel for it, and I'll just play a chord softly and then think, I mean, it all sounds very new age and trippy, but the result of it has been some of the most amazing playing I've done. Things have come out of me that never would have come out otherwise. And I don't know if it's a place to start, but once you've built all these techniques, they're just tools to communicate your emotions and your art, and you have to communicate them to someone. And sometimes it's helpful to be aware of that someone. So, more specifically on the guitar, I still feel that vibrato and phrasing and all the really simple things, or seemingly simple things, because they're not fast, have a great power. If I just bend a string in time, that somehow emotes a lot of power. And the more techniques I come up with bending, I mean, I'm really excited when I come up with a new bending technique. If I can go, like this is a newer one, going. It just has a soul to it, that you can't get on piano. I mean, so many things. The way I think about guitar is piano-ish. I like the math of piano. It's very appealing to my intellect. But emotionally, if I can go, or just get some screaming notes out of the guitar. That to me gives me probably the greatest joy, and I still have a really good time pursuing that. Very recently I learned a lick where I bend up, and I love that. I could play the thing forever because it's like a new way of bending, up and then down. I got to switch over a little string. I use that all over the place, and I can't wait to find the next one. So. I guess it's just, now that I've got all these tools, I want to find the best way to use them to, to speak to the people who love music like I do.